Hi, my name is Penn Shelton, and I'm doing my oral presentation on the spirituality interview with a client for Social Work 674. I put a lot of information into the slideshow because I didn't want to leave any part of the narrative out. I found interviewing this client pretty fascinating experience, much more than I thought it would be, because I thought I knew a lot about people of Catholic faith. Growing up in Boston, and many of my friends were Catholic, I thought I knew quite a bit, been to some First Communions, but it was definitely interesting to dive deeper into the philosophy and personal belief system of somebody who was raised in the Catholic Church from the South, different culture regionally than I'm used to. So I'm going to try to move through the presentation pretty quickly and keep it all to 15 minutes. So I used the pseudonym Johnny for my client, and let's begin. Quick biopsychosocial overview for the client. The client is an 18-year-old Caucasian straight male from Nashville, Tennessee, from an Italian American background. He came from an upper middle class family in Nashville, from an interfaith Christian family, meaning that his mother's side of the family was Catholic and his father's side was Episcopalian. The father sort of just went along with what the mother wanted and raising their children Catholic. He was sort of a non rigid Episcopalian, but did believe in going to church and having faith as part of family life. And so the mother sort of pushed that Catholicism was the faith she wanted to raise the family under, and the father went along with it. So Episcopalian faith doesn't really play a part in the client's upbringing, but he was very involved in church community, Sunday school activities, and camps, and basically just very integrated into the Catholic community along with his upbringing. He was a competitive swimmer in high school, but started abusing substances at a pretty young age, mostly alcohol and benzodiazepines, as well as a lot of hallucinogens, namely LSD and psilocybin mushroom use. The client now no longer identifies as Catholic, but as an agnostic with some general non denominational spiritual beliefs. In the client's upbringing, he was raised Catholic. Like I said, the father was Episcopalian, but the mother's Catholic culture and background really emphasized throughout the upbringing of the children. The client went through First Communion and confirmation. He also went to Sunday school, summer camps, volunteered community activities, all led by the church, giving the client a strong sense of community. He also made many friends in his age group through these integrative church community activities. Although the client was raised in this Catholic upbringing, by the time he was 18, he really found himself moving away from that faith, no longer identifying with it, and describing himself as agnostic. He wanted to stop going to church, stop going with his family, and stop participating. The client reports always feeling weird about different things in Catholicism, namely the aspects of giving confession and the way that the priesthood sort of reigns authority over people and their views of the world. The client never connected with the sense of God or higher power as described through Catholicism. The client didn't really reject the idea of Jesus Christ, but really was not subscribing to it in any sense for himself. The client stated he always participated in religion with his family out of a sense of obligation, that it was the right thing to do, and relates that in his sense, his peers that he talked to felt the same way. They were never excited about it or connected to religion, but basically going along with it because it's what their families wanted and they didn't want to shake the tree. The client currently does not believe in Jesus as God or Savior, doesn't really believe in any sense of deity. He always had a sense that there was some kind of higher power, but didn't know how to describe it and didn't know how to expand on his own belief systems here. The client described his current higher power concept as a sense of community, humanity, the flow of living things in time. He said there's some kind of power and interconnectedness in the natural order. Basically, a sense of connected values and connecting people, but not sure of a specific authority deity or anything like that. The client, as a part of his treatment and as part of his recovery, participates in 12 steps for recovery through 12-step fellowships to help stay abstinent from substance abuse. Many of us are familiar with that. The client shares he practices some kind of meditation and prayer daily, but not denominational or devotional, no specific traditional practice. He does try to find his own higher power and figure out what it means to him as part of the 12 steps. But at this point, he's still sort of going through the motions, but in this sense, it's been self-determined versus put upon him. The client doesn't have a sense of spiritual growth or direction from where he is in life now. He's not really sure what direction he's supposed to be going or where he feels he's going, but he does feel empowered at his ability to choose his own path and separate from the faith of his childhood. When I asked the client what social workers should know about the Catholics in general as a group, he said that Catholics by nature are pretty much all in or relatively uninvolved. I've never met a middle of the road Catholic in my church. The client said that Catholics practice strong beliefs, have rigid rituals and practices, a lot of engagement in their services. He said something along the lines of, you got to stand up, sit down, sing, get on your knees, pray, chant. There's a lot of activity involved in the services. And despite the sense of rigidity, which was off-putting to the client, he felt positively about the sense of community and mutual supportiveness. He felt there is a very strong community engagement and that they get you active in many different activities. But on the other hand, again, there's a strong sense of repression and things that are not okay to say or think about. Specifically, the client mentioned that the scandal in the Catholic Church around the sexual abuse, which took place in the last couple of decades and came to light, they do not talk about it, and they do not allow you to talk or ask questions about it. It's very repressive. They seem to be very ashamed, and he used the phrase hurt pride about that took place. Implications for social work practice. Looking at how providers, social workers can better serve this group and what can be done at the different levels, I looked at a few things. I think that for Catholics that are practicing and believe in their religion, that encouraging the use of church ritual and community are both supportive and resiliency enhancing factors for clients that are egosyntonic and engaged with it. I use the phrase egosyntonic to mean that they are philosophically aligned and open to the practices and philosophies of the Catholic Church, as opposed to, as my client was, who basically reject and deny the doctrine and engagement of the faith and don't feel good about it. As my client said, he's not very comfortable giving confession, feels it was cultish and weird. Again, I hope if any but Catholics are watching this presentation that you don't take offense, that I'm only giving over my clients' reports and personal experience and beliefs is not my own beliefs, but I'm just sharing, and I'm sure if anyone is a Catholic, that they're not unfamiliar with people questioning and moving away from the faith. And I think a lot of times in my own experience growing up in Boston, seeing Catholic families, when there's family discord, that when there's fighting in the family or hypocrisy or unhealthy dynamics, that children who see their parents as religious people, but also can't reconcile the fact that they're flawed human beings as well as role models that aren't perfect, that they tend to sort of reject the faith as they reject their relationship with their parents. And then again, using spiritual development at some later stage, maybe get to reevaluate where they stand on these matters. Going back to the presentation here, supportive practices to help Catholics engage and would be to utilizing priest counsel and confession as a supportive practice. Those who feel that confession, in the process of confession, they're forgiven and empowered, that can be a very helpful and healing process for them. Seeking support from the community, utilizing community prayer during services, especially on Sundays, can help Catholics feel connected and supportive. These are actually interventions which I would recommend also at the micro level of practice, using spiritual practice, prayer, and confession. These are things that can be helped with clients at the micro level, engaging them in their spirituality to work on therapeutic issues and goals. Utilizing meso level support through community support, community prayer, community practice, and engagement. And at the macro level, this one was a little tougher for me to think about. I tend to struggle a little more with macro practice than micro practice, but what I came up with was social workers can advocate for resources to be developed or directed for community engagement to basically build religious community programming I know some people might think, well, taxes shouldn't support religion and church, they're separate. But I think in the aspect of supporting our communities, that these are resources which come back into the community in a beneficial way and perhaps could be engaged outside the sort of separation of church and state idea. Um, Also, in the Hodge article, I looked at spirituality as an individual framework, that it's a universal human expression, and that it's something to be considered in every case. Um, Affirmation of a client's identification with religious background or spiritual belief, as well as affirmation of their rejection of spiritual belief, including believing in God, um, power of prayer, meditation, or anything like that. Basically, just affirming the client's belief system is extremely significant in establishing rapport and building a therapeutic relationship. Looking at spiritual development from a frame textbook, I really like the Fowler framework. Looking at client Johnny's developmental growth, it accounts for the projection or synthesis of new ideas and frameworks, matching the client's journey through or away from Catholicism and into his own framework of understanding. The client seems to fit into the synthetic conventional stage of adolescence and growing up, following along with family desires and beliefs despite questioning or uncertainty. And then he starts to examine his own belief system. After age 18, currently, he seems to have moved into the individuative reflective faith stage, questioning the significance of his former beliefs, asking himself what it means to him currently. While he's going through something of the rejection of faith and leaving Catholicism, he is starting to develop his own ideas about what spirituality and faith looks like to him as he starts to practice something in the 12 steps, as he starts to grow into adulthood and come into ownership of his own belief systems. And that would also align with the next stage on the Fowler system of conjunctive faith, where clients begin to move into a firm adult understanding of synthesized ideas, where they have come into their own and come into a strong belief system on their own, in their own right, versus at the behest of family or community. How do I integrate this information into my own professional growth? In general, I had a few thoughts. One, that people can feel conflicted about their family of origin faith or their family of origin, and that this is a natural and healthy part of psychospiritual development. But on the same time, it can also cause conflict and anxiety. So we have to be ready to meet clients where they're at, wherever they are on the spectrum of or continuum of this development. Supporting religious Catholics through knowledge of and integration of their religious practices would be a very helpful factor in practicing one-on-one clinical work. Supporting former Catholics in their journey to individualize and develop a belief system that fits for them and where they are in life now is just as important as supporting religious Catholics, like as indicated in the Hodge article in the previous slide. I found Frankel's work in Man's Search for Meaning and logotherapy, as people tend to strive to find a sense of meaning in life and set up their own systems of belief. Very helpful in theoretically applying to Catholics who have struggled with their faith and maybe rejecting or synthesizing a new way of fitting it or something different that works for them. Some things I thought were also important is that younger Catholics tend to be less rigid and more liberal, as well as women Catholics also tend to have more liberal beliefs, especially regarding birth control, abortion, choice, premarital sex and relations, things of that nature. Younger and female people tend to have more liberal views, and Catholics have been known to be pretty conservative across the board historically until this generation. Looking at the Hyde article, I found it helpful to look at spirituality as essential features of a human being experience, ways that people connect to their environment, and spirituality concerning a movement towards unity and altruism and transcendent ego. I want to quickly go through just to show you. I'm not going to read all of them. I'm almost out of time. I just wanted to show the questions here and on this next slide that I was able to ask the client. Some of them I developed in the initial assignment to come up with questions. Some of them came from the frame textbook, and some of them were kind of spontaneous in the moment as we were interviewing. It just came up as the course of what the client reflected with me. Here are my references, and I look forward to looking at everybody else's video and seeing how your interviews went. Thanks, and I hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving.